Hashtag the viral content formula that actually works. What if I told you that going viral has almost nothing to do with luck? That the creators pulling millions of views every single week are not just getting fortunate breaks. They are following a precise, repeatable system that most people have never heard of. The difference between a video that gets 200 views and one that gets 2 million is not talent, budget, or timing. It is a formula. And today, we are breaking that formula down completely. Every component, every mechanism, every psychological trigger that makes content spread like wildfire across the internet. Let us start with something uncomfortable. Most people who create content are thinking about it completely backwards. They spend 80% of their time on production, the editing, the lighting, the sound quality, and maybe 20% thinking about why anyone would actually care. But the most viral creators on the planet flip that ratio entirely. Understanding why content spreads is the foundation of everything, and that understanding starts with human psychology, not cameras or software. Back in 2010, researcher Jonah Berger from the Wharton School of Business conducted one of the most important studies ever done on viral content. He analyzed thousands of New York Times articles to figure out which ones got shared the most. What he discovered was groundbreaking. The single biggest predictor of whether something got shared was not how useful it was, not how well written it was, and not how newsworthy it was. The biggest predictor was the emotional state it created in the reader. Specifically, content that triggered high arousal emotions, awe, anger, anxiety, and amusement, was dramatically more likely to be shared than content that triggered low arousal emotions like sadness or contentment. This finding became the cornerstone of modern viral content theory. So what does that mean practically? It means that every piece of content you create needs to make someone feel something intensely. Not subtly. Intensely. The moment you watch something and feel your chest tighten with excitement, or your jaw drop in disbelief, or your brain scream that you absolutely have to show this to someone, that is the formula working. That physical, involuntary reaction is the engine behind every viral moment you have ever witnessed online. Now let us talk about the structural components. Viral content, regardless of platform, almost universally follows what researchers and digital strategists call the STPPS framework, also developed by Jonah Berger. STEP stands for social currency, triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories. Understanding each of these is not optional if you want to create content that spreads. It is mandatory. Social currency is the first pillar. People share things that make them look good, smart, or interesting. Think about why someone shares a complex economic analysis on LinkedIn, or an obscure music artist on Instagram stories. They are not just sharing information, they are broadcasting an identity. When you create content, you must ask yourself, does sharing this make my audience look like an insider? Does it give them something to say at dinner? Does it make them feel ahead of the curve? If the answer is yes, you have built-in sharing motivation before someone has even finished watching. Triggers are the second pillar, and they are wildly underused. A trigger is an environmental or contextual cue that reminds people of your content after they have already consumed it. The classic example is the Kit Kat and coffee campaign. Kit Kat deliberately associated their product with coffee breaks, so every time someone made coffee, the Kit Kat jingle surfaced in their mind. For content creators, this means tying your topics to things that happen regularly in your audience's daily life. If every time someone commutes to work they think of your podcast, you have installed a trigger. That repeated recall drives shares and return viewers over time. Emotion, as we already covered, is the engine. But the depth here goes further. Research from the University of Pennsylvania analyzed 3 months of New York Times content and found that articles generating awe were 60% more likely to be emailed than neutral articles. Practically speaking, this is why reaction videos, shocking statistics, and before and after transformations dominate social feeds. They generate awe almost automatically. When you are planning your content, identify the single most awe-inspiring moment you can create, and build the entire piece around delivering that moment with maximum impact. Public is the fourth pillar, and it is about visibility. Content spreads when it is observable. This sounds obvious, but think about how many creators bury their best work behind long intros or complicated structures. The most viral TikToks, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels front-load the most compelling element. They make the hook visible immediately because when something is seen, it is copied, And copying is the mechanism of virality on social platforms. When someone shares your content, they are essentially making your work public within their network. So designing your content to be immediately visually or conceptually striking is not a stylistic choice, it is a strategic one. Practical value is the fifth pillar. Useful content gets saved, bookmarked, and shared because people want to return to it. Think about the most saved posts in any niche. They are almost always how-to guides, checklists, and step-by-step breakdowns. This is exactly why videos with titles like The 5-Step Morning Routine or How to Negotiate Your Salary in 3 Moves consistently outperform more abstract or purely entertaining content in long-term reach. Practical value extends the life of content beyond its initial push, turning a single piece into a recurring traffic source for months or years. Stories are the sixth and final pillar. The human brain is not wired for data, it is wired for narrative. When information is presented inside a story, comprehension increases by 22 times compared to presenting the same information as isolated facts, according to cognitive psychologist Jerome Bruner. The most viral educational content is never a lecture, it is always a journey. It starts with a character, introduces a conflict, and resolves it with a satisfying insight. If you can embed your information inside a compelling story arc, you have unlocked one of the most powerful sharing mechanisms in human psychology. Now let us go deeper into execution, because theory without application is just trivia. The most successful viral content creators use what is called a pattern interrupt strategy at the very beginning of their content. A pattern interrupt is anything that breaks the autopilot state that audiences are in when they are scrolling. It could be a counterintuitive claim, a dramatic visual, an unexpected question, or a statement that contradicts conventional wisdom. The first 3 seconds of any piece of content are worth more than the next 3 minutes, because those 3 seconds determine whether someone stops scrolling or keeps going. Mr. Beast, the most subscribed individual creator on YouTube, is a masterclass in pattern interrupts. His titles and thumbnails are engineered to create an information gap, a psychological tension between what the viewer knows and what they desperately want to find out. This concept, called the information gap theory by Carnegie Mellon economist George Lowenstein, explains why curiosity-driven content consistently outperforms informational content. When people feel a gap in their knowledge that they urgently want to close, they will click, watch, and share to satisfy that cognitive itch. Every viral title and thumbnail you have ever clicked on was exploiting this exact mechanism. Platform algorithms also play a critical role that cannot be ignored. Every major platform, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, uses engagement signals to determine what gets promoted. But engagement is not just views. The metrics that trigger algorithmic amplification are watch time, comments, saves, and shares. This means that creating content which people finish watching is more important than creating content that people start watching. Pacing is everything. Dead zones in your content, moments where nothing is happening, no new information is delivered, no emotional beat lands, are algorithmic death sentences. Every second of your content needs to be earning the viewer's continued attention. Data from YouTube's own internal research reveals that videos with an average view duration above 70% are exponentially more likely to be recommended than videos with a 50% average view duration. That gap in performance is enormous.